So the first thing you want to do is you want to go to renpy.org and you want to download the Ren'Py SDK. SDK means Software Development Kit. Once that's all downloaded, you install it and it shows up on your desktop. So when you launch Ren'Py, you get the option to create a new project. And you enter your game name. And you choose your resolution. You can choose any of the colors here. These are the pre-built color schemes, and you can always change it later or customize it. And it builds all of these files for you, and this is where you'll be building your game. So I already have a sample game built that I'll be taking a look at today. And I'm going to start off with how you prepare the graphics for your game, because you're going to need those in order to build. So what I've done here is in Photoshop is I've made a template that is the same size as my game resolution. And what I do is I use the file place option to place in the graphics that I have pre-made for my game, like backgrounds and characters and stuff. And the reason I use place is that it allows me to resize the images. So I'm just using some public domain images for this tutorial. So I have here an interior, a country scene, and a town scene. And I'm using these photographs of some ladies as my characters, and they have transparent background. So as you guys can see, these are like full body characters, and what I do is I use my backgrounds as a reference for how my character sprites should be positioned on screen and how big they should be. Once I have everything looking the way I want it to look in game, I do Command A, which is select the whole canvas, and then I do edit, copy, and then file, new from clipboard, and that gives me the full cropped image in the game resolution. And then I save all of those files individually. So these are the ones that I've saved. So these are my art assets for the game. So I have my interior, my exterior, my country, character, and character. So when I have all of my graphics prepared to go into the game, I open up my game archive folder. So for me, the location is Ren'Py and then sample game, which is the name I gave this game. And then I go into the game folder, images, and then I move my finished files into the location of the game. And you see that I've created these 3 folders within my images folder, and this helps me keep everything sorted. And I'll show you in a minute why it is so important to sort everything. You're going to have to do this yourself because Ren'Py does not build these subfolders for you. So when we're moving on to edit the game and actually input our custom data, you'll want to be using one of the script editing programs that is compatible with Ren'Py. I'm using Editra because it's the one I know how to use. And I believe that the first time you set up Ren'Py, when you create a new project and try to open one of these, it'll prompt you to download one of the editing programs and associate it with Ren'Py. So I'm going to open the script file and just show you what I've pre-built. And I'm going to show you how to do all of this and what all of this means. So I'm going to go to the game name, which is the blank game I've already created. and I'm going to open the script file. So this is a default script that is generated by Ren'Py, and it has the bare bones of basically what a game could be. And we're going to be replacing all of this with our game. But first of all, what we need to do is we need to do our definitions. Now, you could do all the definitions up here before the game starts, which is what I've seen a lot of tutorials recommend, but I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what happens when you have a lot of definitions. This is a game I built 1 or 2 years ago. So you can see that I have a lot of things we had to define for this game. And this is why I don't like having everything in one file. And Ren'Py can read from multiple .rpy files, so you can have as many different RPY files as you want, and it won't mess with your game at all. And it just helps me keep everything organized. And this is an example of what a fully built game looks like. It's absolutely huge. And you'll notice that there are indentations and stuff, and the indentations are very important for the script, for it to run properly. Alright, so back to our game. I'm going to do File, New Tab. I'm going to save as, find my sample game, or game name, that's the one we're doing. And we're going to save it as an RPY. I'm going to call it definitions. So we're going to put all of our definitions for everything into this file. So while we're adding our definitions, here's a command that you should know. It's the pound key, and this is commenting out any of the text that comes after it on the line, which means the game will ignore it. You will not see this text or anything on this line in the game. It's good for adding notes and organization for yourself while you're developing. So I'm going to call this character sprites. And then after that, I'm going to have to define the images that I want to use for the characters. So I use the command image to tell the game that I'm going to be defining an image here. And I use the text that comes after that as what I want the game to recognize as being the image when I input it. So if I want this image to show up, or in my game when I launch it, I type this. So I type show and then the image name. So we have our tag of what it is, the name that we're giving it inside the game. Then we do equal and the file path. By default, the game will look into the image folder. So if I had just placed the image for this sprite into the image folder without any subfolders, I would just write the name of the file plus the extension. And that would locate the image and show it in the game. But since I used a subfolder, I would need to write the subfolder name, and then a slash, and then the image. So this tells the game that this image is located within a particular subfolder. I do that for all of my images. Then I also do this for the background images. And for the backgrounds, you want to give them a meaningful name, because that really helps out later on when you are scripting your game. And you want to do this for everything. And if you have a lot of images, it's going to take a long time. So I'm not going to do all of those for this tutorial. I'm going to be running the game that I built previously, so I'm not wasting so much time. So what we also need to define aside from the images is characters that speak in our game. And for this we use the define command. and then we give each character a short mini name that we can just type in the game to save time. It's usually like 1 to 3 letters, and it saves you a lot of time when you're typing up the script. So once we give our character a sort of script nickname, we do equal the command character and bracket, and then we give this character a full name that will appear in the game whenever they're speaking. Quotation and close the bracket. So this name that appears in the quotations in the bracket will appear over the text box when this character is defined as speaking. And the fun thing is, if you decide you want to change a character's name like halfway, you can just go back into this file, just change it in here, and leave this the same. So once we've done that, I'm just gonna delete this because I don't need it. So once we have our bare bones definitions that we're going to be calling on in the script, we can start writing the script. And if you don't have everything defined, your game is going to give you a tough time and it may crash when you launch it. And if that happens, the game will let you know exactly what is wrong when you launch it. And I have my script file all printed out and ready to go, so hopefully it won't take too long. When we're building the script, the Ren'Py file has little label containers. And each one of these is a unit that I would describe it as, you know, when you're reading those choose your own adventure books and it tells you to, like, at the end of this little section it says, if you choose this option, flip to this chapter or this page, and then it has a little section. This is essentially one of those little sections that you flip to. So think of it like that and it'll be a lot easier. By default, our label start is what occurs as soon as we press the new game or the start option when we have the game launched. So that's whatever you want it to be. And return is the very end of your game, and this command will return you to the main menu. So let's do a really quick scene. So we begin with the label, and we're going to start with label start. And first thing we have to do is define a scene, and the scene will show the background that we've defined over here. So the first one, I'm going to do my interior scene. So I write the command scene and then interior, which is the name I gave it. It's not in here, but it's in the other one. And we can also add a transition so it doesn't just like pop. And so I'm going to use the command with, and the built-in default command is fade. So I'm going to write fade, and this will fade the screen from the start menu to the interior scene. We can tell the game to show our characters by using the show command. If we use it by default, they'll appear right in the middle of the screen. So we can say we want to show this image at, and then a location. So I'm going to say left, and I'm going to show the other characters as well. These are the positions that are built into Ren'Py. I actually don't like these positions because it aligns your characters right to the sides of the screen, like touching. I think it just looks kind of weird. So what I like to do is I like to do a custom position. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And for this, we're going to use the transform command, which transforms the image. And then we're going to give it our custom name. So I'm going to call this one M-left, which stands for medium left or mid left. And then colon, and it automatically indents. You need this indent because Ren'Py will associate that the indented thing is a child of the parent category. So these two are associated. So the y-axis align, space 1.0, space x-axis align, space 0.25. So this position means that it will be about 1/4 of the way in on the x-axis, which is the bottom. And I'm going to do one for the M-right as well. This one will also be y 1.0 and x 0.75, which means it's going to be 3/4 of the way across the screen. Now I can say M left and M right. So this character will show right over here, and this character will show right over here, as opposed to over here on the left. And this is how you can add dialogue. or text to the game. So we're gonna do just some plain text right now without a speaker character. So we can say, it was a nice day. And this will appear in the text box at the bottom of the screen with no speaker character identified. So if we want to define that a named character is speaking and we want that character's name to appear above the text box or wherever we've defined it in the user interface, we're going to use our define character names in the script. So if we want this character to speak, we do their little mini name, followed by a space, followed by what they're going to say in quotations here. And if you don't want to define a character or a speaker for a one-time thing, what you can do is you can say, so this will appear where the character name is, space, and this will appear in the text box below. So if you have like, if you're writing a game where you have one NPC that only appears at like one time for 1 or 2 lines, then you don't have to go through the trouble of typing up all this. And if you want to change scenes, you can do another scene, and name another background image. And this will reset everything. It'll clear all of your characters and graphics that you've shown on screen. So you'll need to show them again using these same commands. And you can put in different characters or different positions. And what's fun is you can add little animated transformations to these, and there are a lot built into the Ren'Py program. So I can say, show Amy at M left with move in left. So this means that Amy will appear off screen and then she will move in from the left to the M left position. And these are really easy things that you can do just to add some visual interest to your story. And you can also have some fun with it. Like you can have characters moving around a lot or just staying still. You can have them drop off the bottom of the screen. So, you know, it's pretty fun. It's pretty easy to do. It doesn't require a lot of scripting knowledge to do this. You can also use these same transitions. So if you want a character to suddenly appear like magic, you can use the fade or the dissolve. And if you go to the Ren'Py website, you can go to the documentation tab here, and they have a whole bunch of stuff that you can reference for when you're building your script. So these are all the transitions, or I guess like mini visual animations that you can use that are built into Ren'Py. So we got fade, dissolve, pixelate, move in right, move out right, ease, zoom in, zoom out, V punch, H punch, which shakes the screen. It's pretty fun. Blinds, squares, you can experiment with these. Don't go overboard. This is a bit of heavy reading if you don't know a lot about scripting. So if you're very new to Ren'Py or you've never used these before, just like stick to 1 or 2. Now, with visual novels and stuff, the choosing your own adventure portion is really fun. It adds a bit of interaction to the novel. In order to bring up buttons for player selection of story elements, we need to use the menu function. So for that, type menu, colon, and it indents, and we need the indentation. And now what we write in quotations will appear as separate buttons automatically. So we don't have to do any sort of custom coding for that. This is all built in. So you can say option 1, close the quotation, and colon. This will appear on the button. What appears after this is another indentation. And anything we write on this indentation line will happen only if we choose this menu option. So we can do anything from like character dialogue to scene transitions, or we can even jump to other labels that I have not defined yet. So we'll just say that I have another label here called part 2. For the other option, do the same thing. And if we don't do the jumps, when the menu option has been played out, it will automatically continue to whatever we type down here. So a tip for writers when you're writing your game, if you do these, you'll want to make sure that both of your options, if they just continue on without jumping, you'll want to make sure that the dialogue and the narrative flows well on both options. Otherwise, it can be a bit weird if the player chooses the option that you didn't write for. It can be a weird jump from one of these to down here. So if you want to jump around a lot, you'll be using labels. So just like here, we'll use the label command and a space, and we'll just give this a name. And then at any time during the game, if we use the jump command to a label that we've defined, it'll jump to this. So if we have jump up here, it'll automatically skip all of this to go down here. And if we have this play out and then jump back to this one, it'll play out again. And you can do an infinite loop. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you know, Groundhog Day or whatever. So I'm just going to copy paste that in here. So we'll have two scenes here. We have label start and label cafe scene. We can just do our custom content, and then once we've finished our game, you just use the return command, and return will end the game completely and return you to the main menu. So I'm just going to show you a game that I built for this tutorial previously. So in my sample game, I have Amy and Beth as my character images. For my background or scene images, I have country, town, and interior. For my defined speaking characters, I have AM for character Amy Carter, and I have BE for character Bethany Smith. For my custom transformations, I have MLeft, which will place the character 25% of the way across the screen from this position, and MRight, which will put the character 0.75% of the way across the screen over here. And what I've also done is I've made a custom transformation called gear fade. For that, I used the definition again, define, and then I gave it a custom name. I said gear fade, because it's a sort of steampunk gear image that will dissolve the screen. So for that, I use the image dissolve command, bracket quotation mark, the image I'm referencing, quotation mark, comma, space, and then the time. So 1.0 seconds. This is a bit advanced, but if you wanted to do it, it's pretty easy to figure out as long as you just copy what I've written here and just replace this and this with your own images and your own name. For the sample script, so I have label start. This is what will play as soon as we launch the game. So my scene is interior with my custom transformation, which I called gear fade. Then I show character image Amy at position MLeft with move in left. Then I'm going to show character image Beth at MRight with move in right. Then I have some dialogue between the characters and a scene transition to a different background location, again with my custom image transition. Then I have another scene change with a different transformation. This one's called squares. It's a pre-built Ren'Py transition. And then I have a rather unconventional way to move in characters, which is from the top of the screen and from the bottom of the screen. So we're going to see what that looks like in a minute. And then I have a menu which allows the player to choose which label they want to go to. In this case, it's the player selecting between if they want the ladies to visit the country or the town. And then here I have labels that show the different locations that we're going to. So country 2, it's labeled country 2 over here. And town is labeled town over here. And when you're making your game, you want to give these really meaningful names that are meaningful to you in your story so that it's easier to reference them later. And you never want to use the same label name twice in two different locations, because that will really, really mess up your game. And no matter which option the player selects here, it ends with the ending of the game. So I wrote a little ending scene called label ending, and then it ends the game and returns the player to the home screen. So we're going to see what this looks like in action. So we find our project in Ren'Py. In this case, I'm using my sample game that I pre-built, and I'm going to launch the project. and if everything is right, the game will run. And if I've made a mistake anywhere in the script, the game will not run, and it will tell me where my mistake is. So here's my game. This is a very basic, unfinished user interface. To customize this interface is pretty advanced, so we're not going to look at it for the beginner tutorial. So I'm going to select Start. And here we have our first scene, and our characters appeared using the transformations that we defined. And here we have our speaking character. Her full name appears here, and her dialogue appears here. So as you can see, I used a opposite transformation so the characters crossed each other. You can experiment with the different transitions to see how that might add a little something special to your visual storytelling, and try not to overuse it when it's not necessary, because it just looks kind of stupid, and we're going to see how stupid it looks a little later on when I threw in all those crazy transformations and stuff. So here we have how the text box looks when you do not have a speaking character. No character name appears, and this implies that it's just narration or flavor text. That looked pretty stupid, so yeah, don't do that if it's not needed. And we're going to see the menu in action here. So we can go to the country or the town. I'm going to choose the town. That was another move out transition. And that was another one. And here's the end of our game. So I'm going to show you this again with the other menu option. So as you can see, it's pretty easy to build a very basic game using Ren'Py. So you can play around with it, and don't forget that you can use as many RPY files as you want. So if you're building a very complex, huge game that maybe has multiple chapters, you can use the script file as sort of your chapter index or something. And you can do a different RPY file for each chapter, and this will help keep things sorted. So again, I'm just going to refer to this pre-made game from last year. So this was an unlockable bonus route for a NaNoWriMo visual novel that my team and I built. It was absolutely huge. That concludes this tutorial. Thank you for joining me.